Have you ever felt that the more deeply you think, the more distant you become from others? That the clearer you see the world, the harder it is to fit into it? It's not your imagination. History and psychology both suggest the world doesn't know how to handle deep thinkers, because truth is rarely comfortable, and those who seek it often walk alone. From Socrates to Tesla, from Hypatia to Turing, brilliant minds weren't celebrated in their time. They were feared, rejected, silenced. Why? Because they didn't just challenge the status quo, they held up a mirror to society's illusions, and most people don't want to look. This video is not just about intelligence, it's about the curse of seeing too clearly. It's about the loneliness of minds that think beyond the surface. And it's about you. If you've ever felt like your thoughts don't belong in the world around you. So sit back, because what you're about to hear might just explain why you've always felt like an outsider. Not because you were wrong, but because you were right too soon. If you think modern society is harsh to deep thinkers, just look to the past. It's not a new pattern. It's an ancient one, repeated over and over, almost like a law of nature. History is full of brilliant minds who were misunderstood, not because they were wrong, but because they were right when no one else was ready. Take Socrates, the father of Western philosophy. He didn't write books. He asked questions, questions that forced people to examine their beliefs, their politics, their gods. And what did he get for it? A death sentence, the charge: corrupting the youth, his real crime, teaching them to think for themselves. Even in his final moments, Socrates refused to run. He chose death over silence. His last words, "The unexamined life is not worth living," echo through time, a reminder that society doesn't reward truth, it punishes it when it comes too soon. Then there's Galileo, the man who proved the earth revolves around the sun, a fact so undeniable today we teach it to children. But back then, it threatened the power of the church, and for that he was branded a heretic, forced to deny his findings and lived under house arrest until his death. Or Nikola Tesla, whose inventions laid the foundation for modern electricity. While others chased profit, he dreamed of free energy for all. And for that, he was sabotaged, bankrupted, and forgotten. He died alone in a hotel room while the world profited from the ideas he gave away. And let's not forget Hypatia of Alexandria, a woman philosopher in a world ruled by religious dogma. Her brilliance was her downfall. She was hunted, dragged from her carriage, and murdered by a mob for daring to challenge authority with reason. The list goes on. Visionaries silenced. Truth-tellers buried. Not because their ideas were weak, but because their timing was too strong. Society, it seems, doesn't fear intelligence itself. It fears what intelligence reveals. And so again and again it does what it has always done. It casts out those who see too much, only to build monuments for them. Long after they're gone, why is it that someone stronger than you doesn't offend you? Someone richer might make you envious. But someone more intelligent? They make you uncomfortable. It's subtle, sometimes even silent. But it's real, and it has a name. Psychologists call it the mirror effect. You see, when someone is physically superior, we admire them. When someone is rich, we may feel jealousy but not threat. But when someone is mentally sharper, when their mind slices through assumptions, when their presence forces us to reflect on what we know, what we believe, that hits differently. Because intelligence, unlike strength or wealth, strikes at the core of who we are. It's not about what we have, it's about how we see the world. And when someone sees more deeply than we do, it's not just impressive, it's exposing. We define ourselves by our thoughts. So when someone arrives who can outthink us, they don't just introduce new ideas, they threaten the very foundation of our identity. And most people, they don't handle that well. Think about it. Have you ever shared a deep, thoughtful insight in a casual group and been met with silence, awkward glances, a quick change of subject? That's not coincidence, that's ego defense. In that moment, you didn't just speak, you held up a mirror. And mirrors aren't always welcome, because the truth is most people would rather feel right than be right. They'd rather protect their beliefs than challenge them, even if those beliefs are built on sand. And so intelligence becomes a social liability, not because it's arrogant, not because it's loud, but because it reflects, and people don't forgive the mirror. This is why deep thinkers are often excluded, dismissed, or even resented. They aren't rejected for being wrong. They're rejected for seeing too clearly. And in a world addicted to comfort, truth becomes the most dangerous thing of all. It may sound dramatic, but science backs it up. Your brain reacts to highly intelligent people the same way it reacts to danger. When someone speaks a language of thought that goes beyond social norms, when their very presence threatens what others believe about the world, the brain doesn't interpret that as curiosity. It interprets it as threat. Studies in neuroscience have revealed that when people feel intellectually inferior, their amygdala, the part of the brain responsible for fear and threat detection, activates. In simple terms, when we encounter deep intelligence, our survival brain kicks in: fight, flight, or freeze. But why? To understand that, we have to go back, way back. For most of human history, survival didn't depend on being the smartest person in the tribe. It depended on being accepted by the tribe. Social cohesion meant safety. To be cast out meant exposure, vulnerability, death. So evolution wired our brains to prioritize group harmony over individual truth. To go with the flow, to protect the status quo. Even when the status quo is broken, enter the deep thinker, the one who sees through illusions, who dares to question what everyone else just accepts. They don't blend in, they disrupt, not with violence, not with power, but with insight. And that, to a brain evolved for tribal survival, is dangerous. Because they threaten more than just ideas, they threaten identity, hierarchy, belonging. And so the response is almost primal. Reject them, ignore them, mock them, exclude them, not because they're wrong, not because they're cruel, but because they challenge the balance that the collective depends on. That's why so many thinkers feel out of place in crowds. Why one-on-one conversations go deep, but group settings feel suffocating. Because the group doesn't want truth, it wants comfort. And intelligence, real intelligence, doesn't comfort, it disturbs. So if our brains are wired to fear intellectual disruption, how exactly does that fear express itself? Not with screams, not with violence, but with something far more subtle and far more dangerous: cognitive bias. These are the blind spots in human thinking. Flaws in logic we all fall victim to. And for deep thinkers, they are the invisible walls that make connection so difficult. Let's start with the Dunning-Kruger effect. This bias shows that people with low ability tend to overestimate their competence, while those with high ability often underestimate theirs. In social settings, this creates a paradox. The loudest voices aren't the wisest. They're just the most confident. So when a deep thinker speaks carefully, admits uncertainty, or offers a complex view, they're often drowned out by someone with less knowledge but more certainty. Then there's status quo bias, the brain's preference for the familiar. New ideas, no matter how true, are seen as threats, because truth isn't always comfortable, and the brain prefers comfort over clarity. Next, the backfire effect. When someone's beliefs are challenged, they don't say, "Thank you for enlightening me." They double down, they defend, they entrench themselves in the very ideas being questioned, even when presented with undeniable logic. Emotion takes the wheel. Add all these biases together and what do you get? A world where confidence is mistaken for truth, simplicity is preferred over accuracy, repetition is valued more than reason. In this world, the deep thinker doesn't just struggle to be heard, they struggle to be understood, because intelligence doesn't just inform, it confronts. It says what you believe might not be true. And most people don't want to hear that, so they tune out. They laugh it off. Or worse, they attack. Not because the thinker is wrong, but because thinking hurts. And when thinking becomes painful, defensiveness becomes survival. If deep thinking was already difficult in ancient times, then in the age of social media, it has become almost impossible. We live in a world where every second millions of posts compete for attention, where algorithms don't reward depth, nuance, or wisdom. They reward clicks, outrage, and speed. And in this digital arena, the deep thinker is outmatched. Because depth takes time. And the internet, it moves fast. Too fast. Platforms like YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, they're not built for philosophy, they're built for virality. The more emotional, controversial, or simplified your message is, the farther it travels. Meanwhile, well-reasoned arguments, complex thoughts, ideas that require reflection, they get buried. This is why shallow content spreads like wildfire, why hot takes dominate discourse, why misinformation outpaces truth. It's not that people don't care about knowledge. It's that the system makes it harder to access, harder to reward, harder to even see. Ask yourself, when was the last time a calm, rational, thoughtful voice went viral? Compare that to the last time you saw someone yelling into a camera, getting hundreds of thousands of likes. This isn't accidental, it's design. Because platforms are built around one thing, engagement. And nothing engages people more than emotional reaction, not reason, not clarity, but intensity. And so, the digital world has become an echo chamber, not for intelligence, but for volume, not for substance, but for stimulation. As a result, many deep thinkers find themselves out of place online. Their voices get drowned in the noise, their ideas dismissed as too long, too dense, or too boring. But boring to who? To a system addicted to dopamine, even truth feels slow. So what do? Do we give up? Stay silent? Let the loudest voices win? Or do we adapt, learn to distill depth into clarity without losing our essence? Because while the internet wasn't built for deep thinking, that doesn't mean it can't be reclaimed by it. And maybe, just maybe, the thinkers of today need to become the communicators of tomorrow. To most people, intelligence is a blessing. It means success, it means opportunity, it means control. But to Arthur Schopenhauer, one of the most brutally honest philosophers in history, intelligence was never a gift. It was a curse. Why? Because the smarter you are, the more clearly you see the world. And the more clearly you see the world, the harder it is to live in it. Schopenhauer believed that human beings are driven by a blind force he called the will, a primal urge not for truth or wisdom, but for pleasure, comfort, and survival. Most people, he said, live their entire lives chasing distractions, relationships, status, entertainment, constant motion, or with no direction. But the highly intelligent, they operate differently. They develop what Schopenhauer called the will to truth, a relentless hunger not to feel good but to understand, not to escape reality but to face it, even if it hurts. And that changes everything. Where others find joy in small talk, they feel emptiness. Where others are satisfied by routines, they see futility. Where others chase desires, they begin to question desire itself. The more they learn, the more they doubt. The more they understand, the more they disconnect. Because to the deep thinker, most of life feels like theater, a play in which everyone performs, pretending not to notice the absurdity behind the curtain. Schopenhauer didn't sugarcoat this. He wrote, "A high degree of intellect tends to make a man unsocial." And in many ways he was right, because intelligence doesn't just make you aware of the world, it makes you painfully aware of its flaws, its lies, its contradictions. And once you see those things, you can't unsee them. So while others laugh, celebrate, and chase comfort, the thinker is left staring into the void, asking questions no one wants to hear. This is the price of clarity. And in Schopenhauer's eyes, the more you understand, the more alone you become. Because to him, true wisdom didn't lead to happiness. It led to disillusionment. And perhaps that's the most honest thing a philosopher has ever said. To most people, intelligence is a blessing. It means success, it means opportunity, it means control. But to Arthur Schopenhauer, one of the most brutally honest philosophers in history, intelligence was never a gift. It was a curse. Why? Because the smarter you are, the more clearly you see the world. And the more clearly you see the world, the harder it is to live in it. Schopenhauer believed that human beings are driven by a blind force he called the will, a primal urge not for truth or wisdom, but for pleasure, comfort, and survival. Most people, he said, live their entire lives chasing distractions, relationships, status, entertainment, constant motion, with no direction. But the highly intelligent, they operate differently. They develop what Schopenhauer called the will to truth, a relentless hunger not to feel good but to understand, not to escape reality but to face it, even if it hurts. And that changes everything. Where others find joy in small talk, they feel emptiness. Where others are satisfied by routines, they see futility. Where others chase desires, they begin to question desire itself. The more they learn, the more they doubt. The more they understand, the more they disconnect. Because to the deep thinker, most of life feels like theater, a play in which everyone performs, pretending not to notice the absurdity behind the curtain. Schopenhauer didn't sugarcoat this. He wrote, "A high degree of intellect tends to make a man unsocial." And in many ways he was right, because intelligence doesn't just make you aware of the world, it makes you painfully aware of its flaws, its lies, its contradictions. And once you see those things, you can't unsee them. So while others laugh, celebrate, and chase comfort, the thinker is left staring into the void, asking questions no one wants to hear. This is the price of clarity. And in Schopenhauer's eyes, the more you understand, the more alone you become. Because to him, true wisdom didn't lead to happiness. It led to disillusionment. And perhaps that's the most honest thing a philosopher has ever said. So what do you do when your thoughts go deeper than your surroundings can handle? When every conversation feels shallow? When every room feels like it wasn't built for someone like you? Do you silence yourself? Dull your edges? Pretend you don't see what you see just to fit in? Schopenhauer, despite his bleak view of intelligence, offered something rare for a philosopher. A way forward. His first piece of advice? Embrace solitude. In a world addicted to noise, silence becomes power. Solitude isn't loneliness, it's sanctuary. It's where the deep mind can stretch, question, and build without interruption. Don't chase the crowds. Don't fear the quiet. Because often it's only in stillness that deep clarity is born. Second, seek your tribe. But choose wisely. Not everyone is meant to understand you. And that's okay. Stop casting pearls before those who don't even want to think. Instead, seek out those rare minds who don't fear depth, who crave it. Books, philosophy, intellectual circles, online communities of fellow outsiders. They're out there, and they're just as hungry for real connection as you are. Third, learn how to communicate without diluting your mind. Being deep doesn't mean being complicated. Einstein once said, "If you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough." So simplify, not to dumb down, but to make your brilliance accessible. The world may not reward nuance, but that doesn't mean you abandon it. It means you translate it. Finally, and most importantly, protect your inner world. Because when you think deeply, the world will try to make you feel wrong for doing so. It will label you as too much, too intense, too serious. Let them. What they call too much is often just what the world needs most, but is too afraid to face. So don't shrink to fit into spaces that were never designed for your mind. Don't apologize for thinking differently. Don't abandon truth for comfort. Because while society may not be ready for you today, it might need you tomorrow. So where does this leave us? If society fears deep thinking, or if brilliance is punished before it's praised, if truth-tellers are exiled before they're honored, then what hope is there for the thinker, the misfit, the one who sees what others don't? Here's the truth. You're not broken. You're just seeing the world clearly while others still squint through illusion. You're not alone. You're part of a long, unbroken line of minds who questioned, who challenged, who dared to think deeper than the room allowed. And though that road is narrow, it leads somewhere beautiful. So what's the lesson? Don't water yourself down to be understood. Don't shrink to fit into spaces that weren't built for your mind. The world may resist you now because truth is uncomfortable and clarity is rare. But the world needs you more than ever. Because every leap forward in human history, every real change, every revolution of thought, didn't come from the crowd. It came from the fringe, from the edges, from the outsider who refused to stay quiet. And if you are that outsider, if you carry questions that no one around you asks, if you feel like your thoughts are too heavy for casual conversations, don't stop. Don't let the noise of the shallow drown out the depth of your insight. Don't trade your vision for validation. Don't confuse isolation with failure. Because some paths are walked alone. Not because they're wrong, but because they're the only way to where no one's been. Deep thinking is not a flaw to hide. It is a light in a dark room, feared by some, but needed by all. So keep thinking, keep questioning, keep going. The world may not understand you today, but it cannot move forward without you tomorrow.